This thing's right. This thing's about God, the story, about how He sets us up. But I was born into an immigrant family, and was raised in a very strict and disciplined home. My father, you know, he he was tough. He was tough. He was very strict, old school. If you'd asked me the first time, awareness of God or awareness of life and death, I would have to go back to being 8 years old. And I had a brother who was 2 years older. He was 10, and I remember him begging my mom to let him go to a pool with a friend, the same friend that had invited him over the weekend on a Sunday, and go to the beach. And my father wouldn't let him. Get a phone call, and it's my dad, and he wants to know how we are, and he wants to know where my brother is. And I told him that my brother was out with a friend. Eventually he was like, Jess, can you please stop lying to me? I just want to let you know that your brother is dead. He's not alive. He's not with his friend. You have to tell your mom, because you guys have to come to the hospital, and you guys have to identify. You have to identify your brother. And so I think from that tragic event, my mother became very depressed, and eventually they ended up going to a church in Queens, and so they dragged me along to church with them, like all great parents do. But during this time, I was kind of like just getting involved with the street life. At that time, I was interested in graffiti. I guess the music, the movies that I was watching, it was kind of like this tough guy persona, and started to act out and do things, and take drugs, and began to dabble in selling drugs. Eventually, I got arrested, and I got arrested for selling drugs, and I ended up doing some time. During this time of going in and out of jail for the different drug arrests and the different crimes that I was getting arrested, the only person really that was there to visit was my mother. None of my friends came, or they stopped coming. The very few that did come, I kept touch with. She came to visit me, and I was basically saying to her, like, you have all these thoughts about me, you have these ideas that you have about me, but you don't know who your son is. And then I began to tell her who her son really was, and I say, your son's a criminal, your son's a very dark person. And I remember her reply say, I don't see those things. What I see in you, I see a man of God who will preach the word, who will share his testimony with others, who will walk in God's light, who will know his word, who will know God and be known by God. In jail, barbering and art were my two outlets. I used them to hustle. I used them to earn money, to trade things with other inmates for. And I remember looking my father face to face once he got down to the visiting hall. I asked him, what's wrong? I know there's something wrong. Can you just tell me what's wrong? And he said, last night your mother died. And I remember just really everything was in slow motion. Everything kind of slowed down. He ended up putting up bond. He put up the house to get me out. I remember being released and I ended up going out one evening, and prior to this I was blacking out a lot when I was drinking alcohol. This evening I was in a blacked out state, and some words were said, and the next thing I know, we were outside, we were about to fight, and things happened so quickly. I felt like I was bleeding. I looked down and I was filled with blood. My hands had blood on them. I didn't realize this till I got home, but I had been cut in my throat, my face, my chest was cut wide open, which needed 34 staples to close. I immediately began to call people that I thought would be able to get me weapons and firearms, and so every door closed on me except for one. And this person was like, yeah, I understand that you have all the right to be angry and mad. He said, well, I could put a gun in your hand. You could do the devil's work. Or you could thank God that he spared your life. He's like, Jess, how do you want to be remembered by? Over a Yankee game and a beer, Jess was a loose cannon? Or you know that you're here for a reason, that God has a plan for you. And, you could just give this over to God, and he's the one that's going to get vengeance. And it wasn't long after that I got alone with God, and I was at home by myself, and I just started crying out, like David did in Psalm 51. It was basically said, I've sinned against heaven and you, and I've made a mess of my life, and if you can take this mess and use this mess, I give you this mess, and here's my life. And I said that prayer, and I went to sleep that night, and when I woke up the next morning, it's as if I woke up a different person. I didn't have a burden over my shoulders or on my shoulders. I kind of felt free. I felt free of many things. I had no desire for alcohol. I had no desire for drugs. I had no desire for cigarettes or pornography or anything that would get in the way with this walk with God. And shortly after that, and things started coming into place. God started putting people and situations together, and I got to the place where I was hungry and desperate for a touch from God, hungry and desperate for God, hungry and desperate to know this God who spared me, who gave his life, who paid the ultimate price so that we don't have to live a life of darkness and bondage. And I happened to bump into and meet people, and one of them happens to be Michelle, she is now my wife. But God has a way of seeing things happen and making things happen. And God had to redeem that time, and eventually we became close, and we got into a relationship, and so we got engaged after 9 months, and 9 months later we got married, and now we're in our 4th year of marriage, and she's pregnant, and I'm going to be a father, and so it's really exciting. That love is extended to the drug addict. This love is extended to the workaholic. This love is extended to the student, to the kid who was dragged to church by their parents. This love is extended to the person that thinks that they got it all together. They don't know what they were created for and the purpose they have, and that purpose could only be found in God. Hi, I'm Jesse, and this is my story.